Every man has been told the same lie. You can't understand women because you're not a woman. This comfortable delusion keeps millions of men confused, frustrated, and walking on eggshells around the women in their lives. But here's the brutal truth that destroys this entire narrative. You don't need to feel what a woman feels to know what she wants. In fact, focusing on her feelings is the worst possible way to understand female psychology. The secret to understanding women isn't empathy, emotional connection, or shared experiences. It's observation. Cold, objective, behavioral analysis that cuts through the noise of emotions and reveals the truth that most people, including women themselves, refuse to acknowledge. Women's behavior tells you everything you need to know about their desires, priorities, and motivations. Their words often obscure this truth. Their feelings frequently contradict it. But their actions never lie. This insight transforms how you navigate relationships, dating, and female psychology. When you stop listening to what women say they want and start observing what they actually choose, pursue, and reward, you gain a superpower that most men never develop: accurate understanding of female desire. The fundamental error that destroys male understanding of women is the belief that subjective experience equals objective truth. Men assume that because they can't experience female emotions directly, they can't understand female motivations accurately. This assumption is both false and devastating. Consider how this logic applies to any other area of expertise. A doctor doesn't need to experience cancer to understand how it operates. A meteorologist doesn't need to be struck by lightning to predict storms. An economist doesn't need to feel poverty to analyze market behavior. Understanding systems, patterns, and behaviors requires analytical observation, not personal experience. The surgeon who's never had his chest opened can still perform heart surgery better than the patient who's felt every sensation of the procedure. The same principle applies to understanding women. The outside observer who analyzes female behavior objectively often understands female psychology better than women understand themselves. This isn't arrogance. It's the basic principle that governs all scientific observation. Women themselves are often the worst sources of information about what women want because they're trapped inside their own subjective experience. They feel the emotions, experience the desires, and live through the confusion, but they can't step outside themselves to see the patterns that govern their behavior. The eye cannot see itself. The mind cannot fully observe its own operations. This fundamental limitation means that self-reporting about desires and motivations is inherently unreliable, especially when emotions are involved. Women's self-reporting about their desires is further complicated by social conditioning that teaches them to provide socially acceptable answers rather than honest ones. When asked what they want in relationships, they give responses that make them sound reasonable, moral, and emotionally mature. I want someone who treats me well, communicates effectively, and makes me feel secure. Sounds much better than, I want someone who dominates me psychologically while remaining emotionally unavailable enough to keep me constantly working for his approval. But observe women's actual choices: who they pursue, who they sleep with, who they stay with despite poor treatment. And the second statement proves far more accurate than the first. The business investment analogy reveals this principle perfectly. Your friend can express unlimited enthusiasm for your business idea, claim he believes in your potential, and insist he wants to support your success. But when he spends his discretionary income on a television instead of investing in your venture, his behavior reveals his true priorities. His emotions might be genuine, he might actually feel excited about your idea, his intentions might be honest, he might genuinely want to help. But his actions reveal what he actually values most: entertainment over investment, comfort over risk, immediate gratification over potential future returns. Women operate according to the same principle. They might genuinely feel attracted to stability, kindness, and emotional availability. They might honestly believe they want partners who prioritize their happiness and emotional needs. But observe their behavior, and you'll discover they consistently choose and reward very different qualities. The woman who claims she wants a sensitive, communicative partner repeatedly dates men who are emotionally distant and difficult to reach. The woman who insists she values kindness and respect stays with men who treat her poorly, while rejecting men who treat her well. The woman who says she wants emotional security consistently pursues relationships that generate drama, uncertainty, and psychological chaos. Her feelings about what she wants are genuine. Her stated preferences are honest expressions of her conscious desires. But her behaviour reveals unconscious programming that operates according to different priorities entirely. This creates the psychological trap that destroys most men's understanding of women. They believe what women say about their desires while ignoring what women's actions reveal about their actual motivations. They optimize their behaviour to match stated preferences while remaining confused about why this strategy fails to generate attraction or satisfaction. The man who becomes more emotionally available because she says she wants better communication discovers that increased emotional availability reduces her attraction. The man who treats her better because she claims to value respect finds that better treatment makes him less desirable. The man who prioritizes her happiness because she says she wants to feel cherished realizes that prioritizing her emotions kills her interest. Behavioral observation reveals why these strategies backfire. Women's biology is programmed to test male strength through various forms of pressure and resistance. The man who modifies his behavior based on her stated preferences fails these tests by proving he can be controlled through verbal manipulation. She doesn't consciously want to control you. She wants to discover whether you're strong enough to resist control. She doesn't deliberately seek poor treatment. She wants to find a man whose self-respect prevents him from providing it. She doesn't intentionally create drama. She wants to test whether you'll maintain your center during emotional storms. Her conscious mind generates feelings and preferences that seem to point toward accommodation and emotional availability. Her unconscious programming evaluates men based on their immunity to these preferences and their commitment to their own priorities regardless of her emotional reactions. This dual system creates the fundamental contradiction in female psychology that confuses most men. Women simultaneously feel attraction to qualities they consciously disapprove of and lose attraction to qualities they consciously prefer. The key insight that resolves this contradiction is understanding that female attraction operates through biological programming that evolved over millions of years to identify genetic and survival advantages. This programming doesn't care about conscious preferences, social conditioning, or emotional comfort. It responds to demonstrations of strength, status, and psychological dominance. Modern women inherit this programming, even though contemporary environments don't require the survival strategies that shaped it. The result is women who feel confused about their own desires, attracted to men who seem wrong for them, and dissatisfied with men who seem perfect on paper. Observing behavior, rather than listening to feelings, allows you to understand this programming directly. You can see which male behaviors generate attraction, regardless of conscious preferences. You can identify which strategies create long-term female investment versus short-term emotional satisfaction. You can distinguish between what women think they want and what they actually respond to. The woman who says she wants stability while consistently choosing chaos is revealing biological programming that interprets predictability as genetic weakness. The woman who claims to value kindness while responding positively to dominance is expressing programming that equates aggression with protection capability. The woman who insists she wants emotional connection while withdrawing from available partners is displaying programming that creates attraction through scarcity and challenge. Understanding these patterns requires detachment from the emotional content of her expressions and focus on the behavioral patterns that reveal unconscious motivations. This analytical approach often feels cold or calculating to men who've been taught that love requires emotional attunement and empathetic connection. But emotional attunement without behavioral awareness creates relationships where men constantly react to female emotions while remaining blind to the patterns that actually drive female behavior. They become emotional servants to women who lose respect for men who prioritize emotions over outcomes. The behavioral approach reveals that women's feelings are often symptoms rather than causes of their relationship experiences. The woman who feels unhappy in a stable relationship isn't responding to objective relationship problems. She's experiencing biological programming that interprets safety as stagnation. The woman who feels excited by unavailable men isn't choosing poor partners consciously. She's responding to programming that equates challenge with genetic superiority. The woman who feels bored with attentive partners isn't being ungrateful. She's experiencing biology that interprets constant availability as evidence of low social value. These feelings are real and often overwhelming for the women experiencing them. but treating the feelings as authoritative guides to her actual needs creates strategies that make the feelings worse rather than better. The man who provides more attention when she feels neglected often increases her sense of being smothered. The man who offers more security when she feels unstable frequently intensifies her desire for excitement. The man who becomes more accommodating when she feels controlled typically generates more controlling behaviour from her. Behavioural observation reveals the counterintuitive truth that women often feel better when men ignore their expressed emotional needs in favour of maintaining their own priorities and boundaries. This doesn't mean being cruel or indifferent. It means making decisions based on long-term relationship health rather than short-term emotional management. The woman who tests your boundaries through emotional pressure feels more secure when you maintain those boundaries than when you accommodate her testing. The woman who expresses dissatisfaction with your decisions feels more attracted when you stick to your judgment than when you change course to please her. This principle extends beyond romantic relationships to every interaction between men and women. Female colleagues, friends, family members, and acquaintances all operate according to similar patterns where behavioural consistency matters more than emotional accommodation. The manager who maintains professional standards despite female employees' emotional reactions earns more respect than the manager who modifies expectations to avoid conflict. The friend who maintains his social plans despite female guilt trips preserves better relationships than the friend who constantly rearranges his life to manage others' feelings. Understanding women through behavioural observation, rather than emotional interpretation, protects you from the manipulation tactics that operate through feelings-based appeals. When you know that her stated preferences often contradict her actual desires, you become immune to verbal strategies designed to modify your behaviour. The woman who claims she needs more communication while withdrawing when you provide it reveals that the communication request serves a function other than actual connection desire. The woman who insists she wants more romance while losing interest when you become more romantic exposes that romance serves as a test rather than a genuine need. These patterns repeat across individual women and across different cultural contexts because they reflect biological programming rather than personal preferences or social conditioning. Understanding this programming gives you insight into female psychology that transcends individual personality differences and cultural variations. The behavioural approach also reveals why traditional dating advice fails so catastrophically for most men. Just be yourself, treat her like a princess, and communication is key. All focus on emotional accommodation, rather than behavioural patterns that actually generate attraction and respect. Women give this advice sincerely because it reflects their conscious preferences and stated desires. But their actual behaviour rewards very different approaches that often contradict these recommendations entirely. The man who follows female advice about relationships typically becomes less attractive to the women who gave the advice. This creates the cruel irony where women unknowingly provide guidance that sabotages the men who follow it most conscientiously. Behavioural observation bypasses this trap by focusing on outcomes rather than intentions. You don't ask women what they want, you observe what they respond to. You don't optimise for their conscious preferences, you analyse their unconscious reactions. This approach requires developing emotional detachment from female approval and validation. You must become comfortable with temporary female displeasure if that displeasure results from maintaining boundaries or priorities that serve long-term relationship health. The transformation from emotion-focused to behaviour-focused understanding of women is often painful because it requires abandoning romantic ideals about female nature and male-female relationships. You must accept that women often don't understand their own desires and that accommodating their stated needs frequently produces outcomes that neither party enjoys. But this transformation also liberates you from the exhausting cycle of trying to manage female emotions while remaining confused about why emotional management strategies fail to create satisfaction or attraction. When you understand women through their behaviour rather than their feelings, you develop realistic expectations about what different actions will produce. You can predict which approaches will generate respect versus resentment, attraction versus indifference, long-term investment versus short-term emotional satisfaction. This predictive capability transforms relationship dynamics from emotional chaos to strategic clarity. You stop reacting to female feelings and start responding to female behaviour. You stop trying to make women happy and start creating conditions that generate genuine attraction and respect. The behavioural approach reveals that women's relationship satisfaction often increases when men ignore their emotional requests in favor of maintaining masculine leadership and boundaries. This counterintuitive truth explains why the most satisfied women are often with men who seem least concerned with their emotional states. These men aren't cruel or indifferent. They understand that emotional accommodation often produces the opposite of its intended effects. They prioritize actions that create long-term relationship health over strategies that provide short-term emotional relief. The woman who learns she cannot manipulate such a man through emotional appeals develops respect for his psychological strength. The woman who discovers her feelings don't dictate his decisions experiences attraction to his independence. The woman who realizes her emotional storms don't destabilize his center feels secure in his capability to handle whatever challenges life presents. Understanding women through behavioral observation rather than emotional interpretation is the foundation of masculine psychology that actually works in relationships. It allows you to love women without being controlled by them, care about their well-being without being responsible for their emotions, and create genuine connection without sacrificing your autonomy. This approach requires courage because it contradicts everything modern culture teaches about relationships, empathy, and emotional intelligence. You must be willing to prioritize truth over comfort, patterns over feelings, and long-term outcomes over short-term harmony. But the rewards include relationships that actually work, attraction that persists over time, and respect that deepens rather than erodes through familiarity. When you understand what women actually want rather than what they say they want, you can provide it consistently while maintaining your own psychological health and independence. The practical application of behavioral analysis requires developing specific observational skills that cut through emotional noise to identify underlying patterns. You must learn to distinguish between what women do when they think they're being observed versus what they do when they believe no one is watching. Women's public behavior often reflects social conditioning and conscious image management. Their private behavior reveals unconscious programming and authentic desires. The woman who publicly claims to value emotional sensitivity might privately respond most positively to displays of dominance and psychological strength. Social media provides a perfect laboratory for observing this distinction. Women curate online personas that emphasize their stated values and conscious preferences, but observe their actual interactions, who they respond to most enthusiastically, whose content they engage with most frequently, what types of men generate their strongest reactions, and you'll discover patterns that often contradict their public positions. The woman who posts about wanting respect and kindness consistently engages most actively with men who demonstrate confidence bordering on arrogance. The woman who emphasizes emotional intelligence and communication responds most positively to men who maintain mystery and emotional distance. The woman who claims to value stability and security shows greatest interest in men who represent excitement and unpredictability. These behavioral patterns reveal unconscious programming that operates independently of conscious beliefs and stated preferences. Understanding this programming requires suspending judgment about what women should want and focusing analytically on what they actually choose. The financial behavior of women provides another revealing avenue for understanding authentic priorities. Women's spending patterns often contradict their stated values and expressed concerns. The woman who claims to be practical and financially responsible might spend enormous amounts on fashion, beauty, and lifestyle products that serve no functional purpose. This isn't hypocrisy, it's evidence that women's actual priorities include status signaling, social positioning, and aesthetic enhancement that serve biological imperatives around mate attraction and female competition. Her conscious mind might disapprove of these expenditures, but her behavior reveals their authentic importance to her psychological well-being. Similarly, women's time allocation patterns reveal priorities that often contradict verbal statements. The woman who claims family as her highest priority might spend more time on social media than engaging with her children. The woman who insists career advancement matters most might invest more energy in relationship drama than professional development. These patterns don't indicate character flaws or moral failures. They reveal the difference between conscious intentions and unconscious motivations. Women, like all humans, operate according to biological programming that influences behavior below the level of awareness. The dating marketplace provides the clearest laboratory for observing female behavioral patterns because romantic and sexual choices reveal unconscious programming most directly. Women's mate selection behavior often contradicts everything they claim to want in partners. The woman who lists emotional availability as her top dating requirement consistently chooses emotionally unavailable men. The woman who emphasizes the importance of shared values dates men whose lifestyles and priorities contradict her stated beliefs. The woman who claims to want stability and commitment repeatedly pursues relationships with men who offer neither. These patterns repeat so consistently across different women and different cultural contexts that they clearly reflect biological rather than personal programming. Understanding this programming allows you to predict female behavior with remarkable accuracy, regardless of what individual women claim about their desires. The biological foundation of female behavior patterns becomes clear when you understand evolutionary psychology and sexual selection theory. Women evolved in environments where choosing the wrong mate could mean death for themselves and their offspring. This created sophisticated psychological mechanisms for evaluating male genetic quality, status, and resource potential. Modern women inherit these mechanisms even though contemporary environments don't require the same survival strategies. The result is unconscious programming that continues evaluating men according to ancient criteria that often conflict with modern conscious preferences. The woman who feels attracted to dominant, aggressive men isn't consciously choosing poor partners. She's responding to programming that equates dominance with protection capability. The woman who loses interest in available, attentive men isn't being ungrateful. She's experiencing programming that interprets constant availability as evidence of low social value. Understanding these evolutionary foundations prevents you from taking female behavior personally or interpreting it as evidence of conscious cruelty or irrationality. Women aren't choosing to be attracted to qualities that seem counterproductive. They're responding to biological imperatives that operate below conscious control. This understanding transforms how you approach female psychology from emotional reaction to strategic analysis. Instead of feeling hurt when she doesn't respond to kindness, you recognize that kindness activates different psychological mechanisms than attraction. Instead of feeling confused when she pursues men who treat her poorly, you understand the evolutionary programming that creates this pattern. The workplace provides additional opportunities for observing female behavioral patterns that reveal authentic priorities and motivations. Women's professional behavior often contradicts their stated values about equality, meritocracy, and fair treatment. The woman who advocates for gender equality might consistently defer to male authority while competing aggressively with female colleagues. The woman who emphasizes collaboration and teamwork might undermine other women's success while supporting male advancement. The woman who claims to value competence over appearance might invest significantly more in physical presentation than skill development. These patterns reveal biological programming around female competition and mate selection that operates even in professional contexts. Women compete with other women for male attention and approval while simultaneously seeking male protection and advancement. Understanding these patterns allows you to navigate workplace dynamics more effectively by recognizing the underlying motivations that drive female professional behavior. You can predict which strategies will generate female cooperation versus resistance, support versus sabotage, respect versus resentment. The parenting behavior of women provides another revealing window into authentic priorities and unconscious motivations. Women's actual parenting choices often contradict their stated beliefs about child development, education, and family values. The woman who emphasizes the importance of education might prioritize social activities over academic achievement for her children. The woman who claims to value independence and strength might consistently rescue her children from natural consequences. The woman who insists on equality and fairness might clearly favor one child over others. These behavioral patterns reveal unconscious programming around genetic investment, status management, and resource allocation that operates independently of conscious parenting philosophies. Understanding this programming helps predict how women will actually behave as mothers regardless of their stated parenting values. The relationship patterns of women across their lifespans reveal consistent behavioral themes that contradict stated learning and growth. Women who claim to have learned from past relationship mistakes often repeat identical patterns with different men. The woman who insists she's grown beyond choosing bad boys continues selecting emotionally unavailable partners. The woman who claims to value stability after a dramatic relationship often creates new drama with stable partners. These repetitive patterns demonstrate that female relationship behavior is driven by unconscious programming, rather than conscious learning or decision-making. Women don't choose to repeat dysfunctional patterns. They're compelled by biological mechanisms that continue seeking the same types of stimulation and challenge regardless of conscious intentions. Understanding this repetitive nature of female behavioral patterns allows you to predict long-term relationship trajectories based on early behavioral observations. You can identify which women are likely to maintain attraction and respect over time versus those who will inevitably create drama and instability. The communication patterns of women reveal additional layers of behavioral analysis that contradict stated preferences for honesty and directness. Women's actual communication style relies heavily on implication, suggestion, and emotional manipulation rather than clear, direct expression. The woman who claims to value honest communication consistently uses indirect methods to express dissatisfaction, make requests, and influence outcomes. She might say she's fine, while clearly indicating through tone and body language that she's upset. She might make suggestions about what she wants rather than direct requests. She might create emotional scenes to influence decisions rather than engaging in rational discussion. These communication patterns serve specific functions related to female social positioning and influence strategies. Direct communication can trigger resistance and conflict, while indirect communication allows plausible deniability and emotional manipulation without apparent aggression. Understanding female communication patterns allows you to decode the actual messages being sent, rather than responding to the surface content of their words. You can identify when testing is occurring, when manipulation is being attempted, and when genuine communication is happening. The friendship patterns of women provide revealing insights into female psychology that contradict stated values about loyalty, support, and mutual empowerment. Women's actual friendship behavior often involves significant competition, manipulation, and betrayal, disguised as care and concern. The woman who emphasizes female solidarity might consistently undermine other women's success while maintaining a supportive facade. The woman who claims to value authentic friendship might engage in extensive gossip and social positioning rather than genuine emotional connection. The woman who insists on honesty and trust might manipulate and deceive female friends while justifying this behavior as protective or necessary. These patterns reveal the biological reality of female intrasexual competition that operates even within supposedly supportive relationships. Women compete with other women for male attention, social status, and resource access while maintaining the appearance of cooperation and mutual support. The choice is yours. Continue trying to understand women through their feelings and remain perpetually confused, or learn to read their behavior and gain insight that transforms every interaction you have with the feminine psychology. Choose wisely. Your relationship success depends on understanding this fundamental distinction between what women feel and what women actually want,